Or JB Wood, CEO of TSIA. Gainsight has a big partnership with TSIA. We're very honored to be able to work with TSIA. JB is one of the best speakers out there talking about the whole transition around services and customer success. He wrote a number of books, including the Technologies of Service Playbook. He's also a man with amazing jackets, so I admire him myself. Some great pocket squares from time to time as well. So let me welcome my friend JB Wood to the stage. Come up here, JB.
Buddy, how are you?
Good, great, man. How are you?
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Away. Thanks.
You know, before you come out on stage, right back here, there's a little piece of yellow tape that they put down on the floor. You know what it says? Remember to smile. So I am delighted to be here today, and I'm here to ask you for a favor. Now, before I tell you what the favor is, I got to be honest and tell you it's going to take a little bit of your time. 5 years. So I want to talk about the next 5 years. But in order to talk about the next 5 years, I want to talk about the last 30. You know, if you ask a lot of people, and you say, of all the functions in business, marketing and development and sales and services, and you ask them the question, what is the least innovated business function over the last 30 years? A lot of people will say sales. Now it's interesting. At TSIA, we get to work with hundreds of companies on optimizing their customer engagement models and their economics and their service businesses and their SaaS businesses. And we get to hear what they're worried about, what they're talking about behind closed doors. And I would submit to you, there's a lot of discussion right now about this topic, about the innovations that need to take place in the function called sales. Now, why is this happening now, after 30 years or 40 years or 50 years? There's a lot of reasons. The first is the monetization models have changed. We're not monetizing one big transaction, we're monetizing across a life cycle. The second thing is the buyers have changed. IT used to buy software. Now it's not IT anymore. It's the business executives, the line of business executives. And they talk in a different language. They don't really want to hear about the 10,000 features. What they want to know is, what's the business impact? If I do this project with you, show me the metrics in my organization that are going to get better. To talk in the language of business, to talk in the language of outcomes, to understand the difference between how a hotel chain operates from a hospital, from a bank. We need sellers that can talk in new ways. But I would submit to you, the main reason that sales is about to go through a period of innovation is because in order to change the direction of an organization, it needs a really strong foundational pivot. Something it can keep steady while other parts of the organization change. And I would submit over the next 5 years, and why sales is about to be innovated is because of you. The fully formed customer success organization, and I want to talk about this notion of a fully formed customer success organization, is going to be central. It is going to be the foundation which allows sales to begin to do its work in a different way, in a more efficient way, in a more effective way. So what is a fully formed customer success organization? And what is, most importantly, the real business ROI of customer success? And we would argue there are really three elements. One is the fiscal metrics that we all live with every day. Churn rates and adoption rates and those kinds of things. Those are really important sources of return for the investment in customer success. We also believe, and it was, by the way, the presentation that John gave yesterday about the creation of the CSU at Microsoft was a great presentation. And, he discussed monetizing, not monetizing. We believe, as Salesforce.com and a lot of other companies have already shown, that in fact it can be monetized. And that monetizing customer success, having revenue associated with that activity, is a great way to ensure that it becomes a fully formed organization. Not an art project, not a few people, a few CSMs, but to really build the fully formed customer success function. To charge or not to charge, it's a great debate. And as an industry, we should have that debate. But we know almost half of you are now monetizing customer success in some way, and it's growing. But there's a third thing, which is customer success has got to be focused on the efficiency and the cost of the sales model of your company. How are we doing on these three things? I would say on the fiscal metrics, we're doing great. With the help of software tools like Gainsight, we're able to accurately talk to the metrics, right? The metrics that matter around customer health and retention rates and adoption rates and those things. We're doing a great job there. As I mentioned, almost half of the hundreds of companies that we work with are now monetizing customer success to one degree or another. Again, I would invite you to look at this robust portfolio of fee-based customer success offers that Salesforce.com has made available to customers. But on this last issue of how are we doing and helping our friends in sales become more efficient, I would argue we have more work to do there. Let's talk about their life for a second. For 50 years, sales was about events, revenue events, heroic acts to land big orders that generated in one fell swoop of a pen a lot of revenue and a lot of cash. And the leaders of sales understood the math. They knew how to run the sales organization against a set of what I'm going to call Horizon 1 metrics, meaning here and now, right? I mean, after all, if you run sales, what is your job? Hit the number. Not the number in 3 years, not the number in 5 years, the number this month, the number this quarter. And for 50 or 60 or 70 years, we've been building a set of metrics on how to manage that organization. And they are Horizon 1 metrics. And we knew what it should cost. If you look at the sales and marketing cost of the large enterprise hardware and software companies in the industry over the last several years, it's about 22% of revenue. 22% of all the revenue of the company is going to pay for the cost of marketing and sales. But now, large companies are pivoting over to subscription business models. And as they pivot, they're having to learn to run new plays. The customer engagement model is not land and refresh in 3 years. It's now layer, land, adopt, expand, and renew. And we've moved from revenue events, gigantic revenue events, to revenue moments. Revenue moments that occur across a life cycle. Expansion opportunities, renewal opportunities, cross-sell opportunities. We understand that it's a different model. But if you look at the sales force today, the sales organizations today, they may have added a few new metrics. They may have added renewal rate. They may have added total ARR. But largely, they're still being managed against these Horizon 1 metrics. Go ask your cohort in sales, what's your job? You know what they're going to say? Hit the number. Hit the number. This number, this month, this quarter. That's their job. The problem is, if you look at the cost of sales in SaaS, it's 37%. Not 22%, but 37%. Salesforce.com, 54%. So the point is, if you're a SaaS company born in the cloud and your only metric, the only metric that matters is your bookings growth rate, that number might be okay. That number might be okay. 35, 45, 55, even 65, 75% sales and marketing costs. If you're a born in the cloud SaaS company trying to go public on that trajectory, you may be able to tolerate that. But if you're a large public company that has value-minded investors, shareholders, or you're owned by a private equity company, or I would argue you are a large SaaS company who is on the journey to sustainable profitability, that number can't stand. It just can't stand. And how did it get here? It got here because in addition to all the existing costs, traditional costs of marketing and sales, we're layering on new costs, right? We're building a customer success organization. We're getting expand specialists. We're getting renewal specialists. We're getting, data analytics teams. We're adding old costs to new costs. And we're getting a much more expensive sales and marketing cost than we've ever had as an industry going forward. And I have to tell you, I don't believe that's sustainable. The price of technology in every category is going down. It's going down. We used to think about commoditization as a hardware phenomenon, right? Everybody knew that the price of PCs or phones was going to go down, 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 down. But now it's come to software. I always make a polite joke about how'd you like to have the job running WebEx at Cisco? Do you know how many free alternatives there are to web meeting software, right? And as these prices come down and our sales costs go up, there is an intersection of those two trends, which is not great. Not great. We do need to help sales innovate. We've got to think not just about land, adopt, expand, renew, but we have to think about the specific sales costs that exist in each step of that life cycle. How many of you have heard of CAC, CAC, and Kirk? Okay? CAC is customer acquisition cost. What does it cost to get a new subscription? And many studies indicate that the sales and costs of the first year subscription is more than the subscription itself. That the sales and marketing costs in year one are actually over 100% of the revenue you get from that subscription in year one. The question is, how can you offset that with a much lower customer expansion cost and a much lower customer renewal cost? So that when you blend it together, you don't get 37, 47, 57, you get 18, 20, 22, 24, right? That's the goal. And what's interesting is, do you know who knows most acutely that something's got to change? Sales leaders. We've been interviewing the top sales executives at some of the largest technology companies in the world to talk about this issue, and 92% of them acknowledge that they have to significantly change the way their sales models work over the course of the next 12 to 24 months. Not 5 years to 10 years, but 12 to 24 months. And we've begun to talk to them about what we think are these phases of this layer, land, adopt, expand, renew model. You know, a lot of large tech companies, as I said, grew up with revenue events, selling hardware, software as an asset. And now they're beginning to move. And we've basically identified these 3 stages that companies have to go through. They experiment with layer. They maybe launch a customer success organization, and they maybe start thinking about, moving some of the renewals for their smaller subscriptions over to renewal specialists or whatever it may be. They're experimenting. Then there's this question of layer effective. Once we kind of do some experiments and those experiments begin to show promise, then we say, okay, now we're all in on trying to take this across all segments, all geos, whatever it is. And we try to go to this layer effective stage. But there's a 4th stage, layer efficient, right? How do we deliver the top line results we're looking for at a sales and marketing cost that is sustainable? That is sustainable. And when we start to assess where these companies are, it looks a lot like this. Most of the large enterprise tech companies are still in this experimentation phase. They may have created a customer success organization, but like you've heard so many people say today, it may only be touching a relatively small percentage of the largest customers. It's not global, it's not all products, it's not all segments, right? They're experimenting. Do I comp the sales rep on the renewal, right? Do I do that? Do I not do that? Who gets quota credit, right? These are all us in the experimentation phase, trying to figure out these issues. Very few companies, we would argue, are even in the layer effective stage. And I would submit to you, and I'm going to say this in a second, that even SaaS companies are still in this experimentation phase. We have not yet figured these models out. So I'm going to assert to you that of the large tech companies who are pivoting over to subscription business models, fewer than 10% of them have figured this out, have figured out how to be layer effective. And of the SaaS companies that we work with, we believe only 20% of them have got a sales and marketing costs that are sustainable over the long term. So we have a long way to go in this journey. And when we talk to the sales leaders, they're clear that this is not a one-dimensional subject. This is really about transforming virtually every part, the skills that their sellers have, the way they go to market, what kind of channel partners they need, rethinking how to segment the base and what kind of a customer engagement each segment is going to get. But what's really interesting is the one conversation that seems to be not going off the table, but playing a much less prominent role is just give me more headcount. Now think about this. For the last 30 years, if somebody went to the chief sales officer at your company and said, hey, we need to take up bookings, what do you think their number one answer was going to be? Give me more heads. Give me more headcount and I'll take up bookings. People are beginning to realize, sales executives are beginning to realize that is no longer the answer. We've got to think about operating differently than we have in the past. So all of a sudden, your buddies in sales leadership have got a Horizon 2 problem. They've still got their Horizon 1 problem, right? They've still got this challenge of hit the number, and that is not going away. But now they know there's a Horizon 2 challenge. we have to reinvent and innovate the sales models that we've been relying on for the last 30 years. So what's interesting is, who at your company has that job of defining this next generation layer model? Is it the head of sales? Sometimes we talk to these people and they say, yeah, that's my job. Other people say, no. And we say, well, what about a CCO, or what about a chief revenue officer? And a lot of the large companies say, oh, that's a SASE thing, right? We don't have a CCO, we don't have a CRO, that's for SaaS companies. But somebody has got to look across this entire journey and look at the economics of the entire customer engagement model, not just the silo of success, or just the silo of sales, or just the silo of services. And I'm not sure that every company knows, has assigned that responsibility to somebody who owns figuring out that Horizon 2 set of topics over the next 5 years around re-innovating this customer engagement model. Is it the CEO's job? Do we need to go get, like Cisco announced last week, a new chief customer officer, right? Is it the responsibility of the entire leadership team, sales and marketing and services and success, to pull this off together? So far, that has not happened. That has not happened. But I think it's a hell of a good question. Who owns the responsibility in your company for designing the next generation, this innovative new full tilt, edge-to-edge customer engagement layer model? At TSIA, in addition to all the best practice research areas we've been working on for years now, we're focused on a new one. We're helping these sales leaders to try to figure out what is going to be different. And we don't think it's one or two areas. In these conversations with them, we've identified something like 28 different areas of the sales go-to-market model that are going to need to change. So I would submit to you that sales is next up for transformation. Marketing is different. Marketing is about social. Product development is different. Product development is about UX, UI. Product development is using tons of new tools. Services, which used to be about sending people on site with boxes and parts and tools and whatever, services is now highly automated, highly intelligent. All these other business functions have changed so much. Now it's sales turn. Sales is next up for transformation. And it's not just the journey to layer effective, it's the journey to layer efficient. To get there, to get to that point, there has got to be one strong foundational pivot, and that pivot is you. If the customer success organization is fully formed and can be the rock, the revenue rock for the company, that can deliver not only the high renewal rates, but can deliver revenue streams that the company didn't previously have, and can contribute to lower sales costs, to give sales the room to make the changes it needs to make the investments, to bring in the new skills, you can enable this next generation customer engagement model that I believe is going to be the talk of the town for the next 5 years in the industry. Thank you very much.